All right, this the math segment. Fewer than 100 days in, the president's poll numbers are down. Here's a snapshot of his performance as we get to that 100-day marker. As he approaches his 100th day in office, a candid admission from President Trump. Achieving success in government is more complicated than it is in business. Everything, pretty much everything you do in government involves heart, the president told the Associated Press. Whereas in business, most things don't involve heart. In fact, in business, you're actually better off without it.
No administration has accomplished more in the first 90 days.
President Trump certainly has shaken up Washington, but he's fallen short of the standards he set for himself during the campaign. In October, he offered a contract with the American voter.
What follows is my 100-day action plan to make America great again.
He promised legislation on 10 major campaign promises within 100 days. But he's moved forward with only one of those bills so far, the plan to repeal and replace Obamacare, and that, of course, still has not passed. The White House is now offering other measures of success, touting minor bills that have passed, as well as executive orders.
We've signed more legislation into law in the first 100 days than anybody in the last 50 years. We've put out more executive orders than any previous administration in the last 50 years.
In the new ABC News Washington Post poll, 56% of Americans say President Trump hasn't accomplished much so far, and he faces other challenges. A majority says he lacks the judgment and temperament to serve effectively, and 6 out of 10 doubt his honesty and trustworthiness. But Trump supporters, they're still fully on board. 96% of those who voted for Trump in November say they have no regrets. They'd vote for him again. And the poll has troubling signs for Democrats. More Americans, 67%, say the Democratic Party is out of touch than say the same of either Trump or the Republican Party. Okay, a pox on all their houses, but to me, some of the numbers, Jeanne, that jumped out at me, if in 100, first of all, historically, let's give people an idea. At the 100-day mark compared to predecessors, we've never seen anybody underwater. This is usually the honeymoon period, right?
Absolutely. This is the lowest historically that we've seen. And, you know, we may say that this is a fluid mark, it doesn't really matter, but in the long run it does matter, because if you can't get something started and done now, it's going to be that much harder to get it done down the road. Your own party is going to have less of a reason to go along and with you and work with you. And so that's why this first 100 days matters so much, and why he shouldn't have gone down the healthcare path that he did. He should have gotten a win under his belt, which he didn't. So this is historically low, and I think the fact he hasn't had a win is a huge mark on his record, and it's going to continue to be. And you're hard-pressed to imagine anything big gets done as you're moving into a midterm election year. It's just, it's unthinkable.
And the words that we've shown, judgment, temperament, dishonest, again, unprecedented at this point, and maybe people can say, maybe they're even right, hey, listen, look what happened last November, we're on uncharted times here, right? Okay, maybe even if that's the case. To me, Andrew, the biggest problem that he's shown in the first 100 days is he has an ill-equipped administration. And we were saying in the break here, the incuriosity of not just the man, but the people he surrounds himself with. There's no, I can't say how many administrations always screw things up in their first year. It's almost a wasted year because they don't know how things work or move or whatever else. They got the wrong people in place. I have no confidence, with the exception of the military folks that he's got in place here, that he has the team or he himself has the desire to go up the massive learning curve so the next 100 days are any different than the first 100 days.
One of the key things about the first 100 days of any administration is figuring out the process, how to make it work between the White House and the branches of Congress. It's like going to an address you've never been to before.
And just to amplify your point, we've never had an administration with such unlearned people in the process, let alone.
I was getting there.
Right.
I was getting there because it's like going to a new address for the first time. It's always harder the first time, and then once you know where you're going and you have a path that you can follow, it's easier to go back again and again and again, which is why you want easy sort of lob things that you can pass through Congress in the first 100 days so that you have those relationships so that you can build on them again and again and again. The other deficit is that there is nobody in this White House who has legislative experience with this Congress, or at least enough to actually be able to reach out to all of the different groups within the Republican Party or even some Democrats and say, let's work on this and let's get a deal done. So they don't know the mechanics of how to get it done. So they've got that learning curve also. And then these poll numbers, it's not just that they're underwater, they're dropping. So it's as though the American people are looking at him and losing confidence in his abilities in all of those areas as well.
The flip side of this, Dominic, is Democrats. The best thing they've done so far is just shut up and get out of the way, okay? But with the poll numbers there, 96% of people who voted for Trump would do it again. Even though Trump likes to say he'd win the popular vote, he lost by more than 3 million votes, but the same people polled. I'm not even sure why they asked the question, but nonetheless, if Hillary and him, they had a chance to do a do-over right now, he'd actually win the popular vote. He didn't win it. I know he likes to say he does, but in this hypothetical rematch, he'd win there too. I happen to think that number's a little skewed. I know people anecdotally who don't, maybe, I'm not sure would love to do again, vote again the same way they did for Trump. They just didn't like her. Obviously, she's not going to be in the ticket in 3.5 years again. But my point is, are Democrats in equal trouble here?
No. Richard, I want to go back to the poll for 1 second. So the poll person calls. So, are you willing to admit that you made the biggest mistake of your life and supported this president?
Yes, I'm an idiot.
Right. Nobody's going to say that. So you're going to stand by your guns. You're going to go, no, I would do exactly the same because of dislike for Hillary Clinton as well. Democrats, they're doing good. It's almost remarkable. Some high-paid consultant pulled them all in the room and said, listen, shh, stay out of the way. And so every now and then, they've even pulled back Pelosi. Can you imagine that? Because let's be honest, every time she jumps out there and speaks, Americans see far left liberal from San Francisco.
Yep.
And it doesn't help the Democrats. And the same with Schumer. Okay, more moderate, but liberal from New York. So just stay out the way, and Donald Trump is going to handle all of this for them.
And the reason, Jeannie, he's in a box here. He's got to keep the base, which are the only ones who stayed by him. But conversely, if he does get health care reform through somehow, some way, or he does do tax reform somehow, some way, think about the stories that are going to come attached to that. We know about the proposals, who's going to do great in the tax reform. It's guys like him, okay? Conversely, health care reform, people are going to lose something they have right now. And as Andrew keeps saying, and the numbers show it, people believe he owns it all right now. He can't blame the last guy anymore. And he can't blame Democrats because they have no power. So I don't know, the next 100 days, I don't see a way it gets better unless there's some international incident where he has to act as a commander-in-chief. But barring that, the hard stuff's still to come. This was the easier stuff. And the idea that executive orders are some accomplishment, I seem to remember a guy with orange skin and funny hair telling me that executive orders that Obama did was the worst thing ever since sliced bread. Now he's bragging about how many he did. So I don't see this stuff getting easier for him.
Yeah, and I just have to say about the poll, and to Dominic's point, I'm not so certain that I believe that his base is as far behind him as these polls indicate. As Dominic said, it is very easy to say, oh, I'm not going to second guess myself. I made the right decision. You know, we go back when they were trying to talk about flag burning. Should it be, should we have a constitutional amendment? Oh, everybody said yes, 96%. But when it came down to it, people weren't going to support that. And the same thing is true here. You have to also look at the energy behind it. And if you go to where Republicans are going in their home districts, you're not seeing a lot of Donald Trump supporters out there at these town halls. You're seeing people who are angry. Tell him to release his taxes. Tell him to do what he promised in terms of Obamacare. That's where the energy is. So I think the president's got to be really careful about listening to these poll numbers and suggesting that at least his base is so strongly behind him, because I think he's going to have a rude awakening in the midterm election, and he will find that those Republicans will desert him faster than he can blink once they realize that hanging on to him is a losing cause. And that's what it seems like in these districts.
And I've said whatever it's worth, I know we're up in the Northeast here, but 4 years ago, I still saw Romney bumper stickers. 8 years ago, I saw the McCain bumper sticker. I don't see any Trump bumper stickers. I don't know what that means, except I just don't know there's a lot of people bragging about how great he's made America in the first 100 days. All right, coming up next, Speaking of promises, we've heard tons of them. A lot of bluster, but also a lot of blunders. We're going to take a look more carefully at the president's first 100 days in terms of what he's promised and what he's delivered.